and welcome to another episode of Financial Minds Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Jaime Agostino. As you know, on this podcast, we're joined by financial industry experts to talk about topics, trends, and themes that credit union professionals need to know about. This week, I'm joined by Jon Weisblatt, VP Corporate and Business Development with DoubleCheck. Welcome, Jon. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Jaime. I appreciate the invitation.
All right. So tell me, who is DoubleCheck and what problem are you helping credit unions solve?
So DoubleCheck is a fintech company. It's been around in various fits and starts since about 2013. And the company its purpose is to help credit unions and banks manage through their overdraft situations that their, in credit unions case, members run into pretty frequently. So overdrafts, NSFs, anytime an account gets overdrawn and you have members who have some churn associated with that. They get frustrated with fees. They want to go resolve it in the branch. And it takes a lot of time. It historically has taken a lot of time for those issues to go get resolved. DoubleCheck is a way to automate all of those processes. And in fact, now we're in a position where, and I think we'll talk about this in a little bit, where CFPB and NCUA are really pushing hard for changes for overdraft fees and NSF fees. DoubleCheck is like built to go solve that in a very regulatory friendly way.
Wonderful. So how many credit unions are you currently serving, and how do the credit unions benefit from the DoubleCheck program?
So we've got a couple of dozen credit unions on the platform today. And I can tell you that given the regulatory environment right now, my inbox has been blowing up with folks who, let's say last year, may have been interested in learning more. Now they're actually coming to us with a little bit of panic in their voices from their board discussions and their executive team discussions, because it's clear they're going to have to make some changes. And that's what that's why they're reaching out, and that's why they're looking at the tool set that we've got and seeing, okay, it checks regulatory boxes. It's better for our members because it puts members in full control over what happens, and it takes all of the credit union team out of the decision-making process, putting it all back on the member to decide how they want to handle it, right? Do they have money somewhere else? Can they bring in money from another place to go resolve the transaction? Really up to the member. It gives them full control, full transparency in what's going on. And it takes the credit union out of the position of having to decide what the best process is for that member, because really individually, we all know what our current financial situation is and how we would prefer to handle certain situations when we run into them.
All right. So tell me then a little bit more about, the benefits to the credit union's members with the DoubleCheck program.
Yeah. So typically right now, the member is saddled with various fees, right? With NSF fees and overdraft fees when that account gets overdrawn. And they don't really have a lot of control over that. And one of the frustrating things that members have expressed, both in terms of class action lawsuits, as well as you can see it in the regulations and the comments behind why these regulations are moving forward. Members don't like to be surprised, right? Part of the issue is they get hit with a fee. This is one of the only fees that happen after the fact, right? If you want to do a wire, right, you have a wire fee and you accept that fee up front as disclosure, you accept the fee, and then you proceed with the transaction. When you have a foreign ATM fee, you go to the ATM, it's going to cost you $3. If you want to move forward with the transaction, do you want to move forward with it? You click yes, and then you get hit with the fee. These fees actually happen in a slightly different way, in that the consumer, yes, they went through the disclosure when they opened the account, and yes, you've made it public, but where they have been getting frustrated is they get hit with that fee after the transaction has already taken place, and they feel like they've got a lack of control over what has happened and what's happening with their account, which leads to kind of aggravation. So what DoubleCheck is able to do is put that control back into members' hands and say, okay, you've had this situation happen. You've got a window of time to go and resolve it. Do you want to have a fee? Or do you want to move money from somewhere else? Do you want to have a more flexible fee? Right? There's lots of different ways we can set this up, but it's really designed to be incredibly member friendly. And again, put the control in their hands and let them decide how they want to handle things. There really is no other product that really does it quite this way with that full transparency and control.
All right. So then kind of walk me through it. How does the DoubleCheck work?
Great question. I'm glad you asked. So the way it works is when an account gets overdrawn, right? They don't have the money in the account, and whether it's an overdraft transaction or an NSF prior to the NSF fee happening, the member gets notified through text and email that something's up with their account. And that text and notification is coming from the actual credit union itself, right? So it's looking like to the consumer, like it's coming from the credit union. They then log on to their online banking through a single sign-on. Now, we've got a lot of different online banking partners. Alchemy is a big one we've been hearing more about. Banno. I mean, Mahalo, you pick, we've integrated with a whole lot of different online bankers. They log in online banking, and then they can see the actual transaction. And at that point, they can decide how they want to go resolve it. Do they want to just pay for it with a credit card? Do they want to move money in from another account? Do they want to call their mom and have their mom Venmo them $100 to go and resolve it through an instant transfer? They can do all of those things with the DoubleCheck system. It can be really quick for the individual member. They see the transaction, they go and resolve it, and then they call it a day. It's all finished. But the feedback that we've been getting from individual consumers, from our existing customers as they've gone through this, is that they really appreciate having that kind of control. We had one credit union who had a couple of people on their responses say that they have a few different accounts, but they're going to move them all over to this one credit union because it's giving them that kind of support that they really need and value.
Okay. Well, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. There's a lot of talk about, regulatory, risk management, other risks. So how does DoubleCheck help a credit union with risk management, like reputation or regulatory risk?
So, yeah, that's great. And that's what I've been hearing a whole lot about recently from board members, credit union executives, and so on. If you read the proposal, and by the way, when I hear some executives get so wound up over the CFPB proposal, and I understand why. They refer to January 17th. That's the day it landed. Some of them refer to January 17th the way other people refer to January 6th, right? They get really animated about this and really, really passionate and fired up about it. There were a few things in that report, or that proposal, about why they're moving forward with this the way they are. And one of those reasons was that they felt like the fees were out of line with the size of the transaction. Okay, so for a $6 cup of coffee, you have a $30 fee, right? Or $35, depending on the institution. They've got different fees that are associated with that. Mm-hmm. So, we look at that and say, well, what if you could actually have a more flexible fee? What if you could have a fee that is, say, $1 on a $6 cup of coffee instead of a $30 fee, and you can flex that up to be let's say a $15 fee on $150 worth of groceries. As the financial institution, you can decide what those fees are. And with DoubleCheck, you can actually set that. We just need the table, and we can put that in there so that when those transactions show up, we can actually assess that fee to be more in line with the transaction, which is where the regulatory environment wants to go. So there are a few things that we have built into the system. We've spent a lot of time with CFPB, with NCUA, with examiners, with Todd Harper himself. Our CEO met with them one-on-one, reviewed the tool set, and it's the same tool set that we show customers we're deploying today. The feedback has been incredibly positive. Now, they can't come out and say, we endorse this, because that's not what they do. But if you read between the lines on some parts of the proposal, you can see that there are technology ways to go and solve that. And that's because they had seen what we have built to go and address this specific issue of how to make members' lives better and how to make it regulatory friendly, how to make it member friendly, and in a lot of ways, help make it P&L friendly. So we're really trying to hit all the different bases there that are causing concern, both for reputation risk, in a lot of ways, fraud risk and regulatory risk.
Okay. Well, I've also heard, from several credit unions that they're concerned about losing the income that NSFs provide to the credit union. Mm-hmm. Will the income that the credit union generates from the DoubleCheck program be able to match what they typically are receiving from their NSFs and overdraft programs?
So there's a couple of different ways to think about this. And one is that if you've got a $35 NSF fee, chances are, I don't have a full-on crystal ball here, but if I were to make a guess, it would be that fee is probably going to need to be reduced at a minimum so that the credit union can stay competitive. Okay, so that part might drop a bit. Now, we've got some industry data that we've looked at, and we've developed what we call a flex fee. Okay, and that's what I was talking about before with the $6 cup of coffee. And what if you could have a $1 or $2 fee with that? And what if you could flex that up so that the higher the dollar amount that account went over, you have a fee that's more commensurate with the actual transaction size? And the modeling that we've done says that there's that component of how much revenue you could potentially keep, as well as charging a small amount for the DoubleCheck service, which is okay to do. And I'll talk about that in a sec. But if you combine those two, you can actually keep between 70 and 80% of your existing revenue. And I can model that out as long as I get, some key components of your data. Now, with DoubleCheck, we don't require that the financial institution charges for the service, but the regulators were okay with it. And that's because, again, it's very similar to a foreign ATM fee where you can opt in, or you can say, I'm going to cancel the transaction and opt out, and I don't want the fee at all. So it's really up to the financial institution to set whatever fee they want for the DoubleCheck service. We have some that charge $20. We have some that charge $0. This is really the financial institution's money. So that's all part of the modeling also that we do with folks who are interested in talking with us.
Okay. So for credit unions that are interested, could you tell me what does the implementation process for the DoubleCheck program look like?
Well, I can tell you, after being in the space for a little bit, that there are no two financial institutions that are exactly alike, right? There are different fee structures, there's different policies, different processes, there's different disclosures, there's a whole bunch of different things. So one thing that makes DoubleCheck unique in the fintech world, I've been in fintech for 20 years now. One of the things that makes it unique is that this company was actually started by former bankers. So they actually approached the situation as with a bank mindset, or a financial institution mindset, right? And that's different than a lot of other fintech companies that start as software companies, and then they try to move into the financial services space, because it's a very different beast in financial services than it is on different kinds of enterprises, right? The regulations are different, the compliance is different. It's just different. So this company was actually built financial institution minded first. So they started with SOC 2 compliance. They started with patents. They started with making sure that the pieces that they were looking at when they went and selected a vendor were already locked down, and then had to go build the software kind of around it. So that piece has already been taken care of on the DoubleCheck side. But again, because we know there's no two financial institutions that are built exactly alike, we've actually designed it to be very customizable and configurable. So when onboarding happens, so your question was about, what is that process like to get onboarded? We spend a good amount of time with every financial institution that signs on to really understand what their processes are, what their policies are, let's say what their fraud policy is, right? What happens when a consumer comes in and says, this was a fraudulent transaction, right? Well, there are processes built into that, right? Do they go online and sign documents? Do they have to call? Do they have to be on a recorded line and do a documented affidavit? I don't know what those are, but every financial institution is different. So we spend a lot of time on onboarding asking very detailed questions, because when we stand this up, we want to make sure it is in line with the way that credit union does business today. So it generally can go as quick as 60 days, but really we're asking questions that a lot of them haven't thought about in a long time, right? And the only person who knows that is Barbara back in the back office, and she's on vacation for a week. So I got to wait till Barbara gets back, and she'll answer when she gets around to answering it. So we got to go through a lot of that to get to surface some of the answers to the questions. But then once we have them, it's pretty painless.
Okay. All right. Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
Let's see. We are very closely working with Jack Henry on the core. So we integrate with the core and the digital provider. So we are very tightly integrated with Jack Henry on Scimitar. And actually, Jack Henry has somebody on their team that does nothing but the DoubleCheck implementations. They feel very passionately about it. So they've been a big advocate. We also, as I mentioned, tie in with the online banking system, and we are a premier partner of several of the online bankers too. So we have tried very hard to make this as easy as possible. And that takes a lot of effort to make it easy. But once consumers start to see it and understand what this is, it goes very quickly, right? They get notified, they log in, like, oh, shoot, that check, I had an issue with that check. They go in and resolve it, and they call it a day. But it is much better for the consumer to actually have the control over what happens. To make sure that their rent check goes through, if that's the most important thing to them, or their mobile phone payment goes through. I was talking to a big credit union earlier today, and she told me that they have $12 million in T-Mobile transactions that are declined, I think, so far this year. Well, that's a lot, right? That's a big dollar amount. That was pretty good sized credit union. They're like, what if you could give the consumer the control to say, oop, I didn't mean to do that. And I have room on my credit card. If I had just had the opportunity to go in and move that over to a credit card, it would have made my life so much better. And I'll tell you something else too, since you asked the question. I am a former business owner, and I had my own fintech at one point. And this works really well for commercial accounts also. And I'm not sure how many Viso folks have commercial accounts, but I'll tell you, I never went over, but I came darn close a few times. And when you don't have the control over your merchant services account and when they're going to go deposit a payment, it gets kind of scary. So just to be able to say, okay, I got an issue, and I'm going to decline the payment to my marketing vendor, because the marketing vendor can always wait, but my rent check has got to go through, because that is mission critical to the business. Just to be able to, or my car payment. I got a lawn care business and I got to make my truck payment, right? Whatever it is, you can go in and prioritize that based on your needs of your business, not based on what the credit union's formula says. Now, if the consumer does nothing, the credit union's formula continues to roll through, but at least you're giving them a choice and an option to decide what's best for their, in that case, business, or even, on the consumer side in their lives.
All right. Well, Jon, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing all this information about DoubleCheck. If anyone's interested in learning more, reach out to your Viso Financial Corporate Account Manager. We can schedule a meeting with Jon, and you guys can discuss it further. So thank you. All right.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Sure. This episode of Financial Minds Meet the Experts is brought to you by Viso Financial's partner with Know Before. The more practice and emphasis your credit union puts into security awareness, the better you'll be able to deal with social engineering threats like phishing, vishing, and cyber attacks. Which is why Viso Financial has partnered with an industry leader in simulating social engineering testing and security awareness training to help you get that practice through our social engineering testing services. By utilizing the same tactics criminals might leverage to gain access to your credit union, this service can help you gauge your level of risk within the institution and adjust your security awareness training accordingly. Make security awareness a top priority at your credit union with Viso Financial social engineering testing services. Find out more on our website at www.vfccu.org or contact your corporate account manager. As always, thanks for listening and make it a great day.